You know, we're a research garden. We do landscape evaluations. We try and see what grows well here, what doesn't grow well here, and let people know about that. And we do a lot of, anecdotal evaluations, perhaps we would call it, where we're not replicated trials and things like that. But this summers like this, as tough as they are to actually work in, are great for us, just like cold winters and the drought in 2007, because it really helps us see what performs under kind of our extreme conditions that we have here in central North Carolina. So this walk is kind of based on, you know, some of my observations over the summer as walking around. You know, what's really performing well. Some are going to be no-brainers, and when we have Cactus on here, yeah, they like it hot. Some are ones that may be a little bit more surprising that they do so well here. But there are a lot of plants that do tolerate these extreme temperatures that we have very well. And we're lucky because we can pull from all kinds of different areas of the world. And you'll see we've got on this list plants from Argentina, native plants from South Africa, from the Mediterranean, just kind of all over the place. And we can grow a lot of these plants from these different areas. So as always, I welcome other people's comments. We've got a wealth of knowledge and information with our members and volunteers and folks who come out for these tours. So if you have comments, if you agree, disagree, have a different experience, we'd love to hear that. I don't mind hearing, you know, you say that doesn't grow well for us, or that grows well, but I've never had any luck. You know, any of that kind of thing. We love hearing, because the more information we get, the more we know. All of us as a group. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started, head down to the spree garden, talk about a neat little bulb. The first plant on the list is this bulb that's flowering right here. Pretty obvious that it's in the Amaryllidaceae family. It looks very much like a Lycoris or Amaryllis or Narini, one of those in that group. This is a bulb from South Africa, Zimbabwe, over to some unsubstantiated reports of it from Kenya. It's a like many plants from that region. It is a bulb because it is a pretty extreme environment in South Africa. There's some extreme droughts in a lot of the areas, and this is a plant in its native habitat is a drought dormant plant. Now here for us it goes winter dormant, but it also goes drought dormant, and will start growing again as soon as it gets some rain. The rain we had this weekend really pushed it back into growth, because even here it'll, when we dry out like that, it'll kind of go dormant. In fact, we thought it was dead in 2007 because when we had that drought it went dormant, and we thought this would keep growing all through our summers and then fade out during the winter. In areas with high rainfall, if in high humidity like us, if you put it in a very well drained soil like we have here, it does well. Now you put it in red North Carolina clay, it is going to die quickly. It will rot out. It needs that really, really good drainage. But folks are growing this in the Pacific Northwest. Down in Hawaii they grow this, where it grows year round. Apparently in kind of high rainfall areas where it's warm all year round, those leaves can get to be 3 or 4 feet long, and they just keep going. You can see kind of where when it just stops, the tips of the leaves kind of truncate and get these flat tips. I think it's cool even without the flower on there, because the way the leaves emerge from there is just real funky, the way they kind of spin around and lay flat on the ground. It does grow well in a container, but it is a large bulb, and it, unlike some bulbs like Amaryllis, which wants Agapanthus, which likes a kind of a root-bound container. This actually likes a pretty free root run, so it wants a pretty big pot if you do grow it in a container. And you can grow it in a mixture of some compost and gravel like this. You want it really well drained. In areas with a little more with conditions a little more suitable to it, the flower stalk can get a little bit taller, but not a whole lot taller, but maybe 14 inches or so. Questions? Thoughts?
How available are they?
How available are they? Not terrible. One of the places you can sometimes get them is grown from seed. They're pretty easy from seed. Silver Hill Seed often has them, which is an African seed company, and they're real easy to deal with. They'll send you whatever you want.
How did we get it?
We got it from Tony Avon. He did not sell it at Plant Delights. He may at some point in the future. I don't think he sells it. But we trade a lot of these oddball things that nobody in their right mind would ever pay good money for. This is a tricky. We have a location that is good for this plant. You know, perfect drainage, raised, gets a lot of afternoon sun. If you have less than ideal conditions, you know, it's going to die quickly. So,
Does he produce itself pretty well, or?
Does it reap from? Well, it's a bulb. So you could do some score the basal plate on there and perhaps produce offsets. Doesn't seem to produce offsets for us. We've had it in the ground since 2006 and has not produced any offsets in the garden. So doesn't do that. Now seed, we may if it produces seed this year, if this individual plant produces seed, we may collect seed and maybe grow it out and offer it to a connoisseur plant program. Who knows?
Mark, would you consider this very lean? Not very fertile?
Do we consider this very lean soil, not very fertile? No, this is actually a relatively fertile soil. It's about 2/3 good topsoil. In North Carolina, topsoil is very fertile. The clay that's in there is great stuff. Clay, people complain about clay, but it's fantastic stuff. It's filled with nutrients. It's great. You just need to lighten it up. The other third is this permatil that we mulch with. This permatil is mixed in there, which also can hold some nutrients. So it's a relatively fertile soil, as evidenced by how fast everything's growing here. This was all planted in 2006, 2007, and it's now we're having to make decisions about what we pull out. Things like the Romneo, which doesn't grow here, we're fighting to keep it in check. So,
Mark, how long does the flower normally last?
The flower will last for quite a while. It's been going since I don't know when exactly it started, but early this week, late last week, and you can see there's still buds that haven't opened up on it yet. So it's going to keep going for another week or so. So a couple of weeks in very hot, sunny conditions. If it were a little bit cooler, things cooled off and got down into the high 80s, low 90s. Maybe it would last even longer, but And as you get a bigger bulb, it can flower as much as here, maybe twice a year. In year-round growing climates, can flower 3 or 4 times a year. All right, the next one, I had to put one cactus on here because we know cactus like it hot. Now, does everybody know cactus only grow in the New World? There are no Old World cactuses. There are no cactuses in Asia, no cactuses in Africa, none. Now there are cactus-like plants in some of those other areas. Usually euphorbias take their place, but cactus only grow in North America, Central, South America, and the American Caribbean islands and those types of areas. A lot of people don't realize that. This one, Denmoza Rhodocantha, is a little guy from Argentina. That's its main location. It may spread out a little bit beyond Argentina. Actually, the name Denmoza is kind of an anagram of Mendoza, Argentina, where it was originally found. It's a neat little cactus. It is a columnar cactus, kind of short, stout. It can grow to about 3-5 feet tall, kind of this round, upright cactus. Tends to grow solitary. You don't get any branching on there typically. Kind of interesting that as a young plant, the spines are all kind of red, orangey red, brown red like this, and then as it gets older and the spines get older, they turn kind of gray-brown. So on larger specimens, and you can start to see that on this one, if you look at it closely, you'll get kind of this red on top, and then kind of in between phase in the middle, and then kind of gray-brown at the bottom. So when you see them, large ones in the landscape, you get these kind of tricolor effects out there, and when there's multiples in different stages of growth, you get some with more gray and some that are all red, and they kind of look all different. Cactus have some of the prettiest flowers around in plants, really bright colors they tend to be. This one is a bright red, kind of a tubular flower that comes off of there. As they mature, you'll get more and more spines. The older they get, you tend to get more and more spines. This is relatively few spines on there, so as it gets larger and matures, you get more spines. And where it flowers, the little areoles, which is where all the spines come out, will get almost like bristles. There'll just be a whole bunch of them there, and that's how you know you're going to get some flowers there. Sometimes it can, depending on where they are, it can take 5 or 8 years for them to come into flower, or there are reports that sometimes it takes 30 or 40 years. I don't know what the difference is other than the growing conditions. There is a form that has almost yellow spines, kind of yellowy orange spines as opposed to the red, but I've never seen that. I've just heard of it, read about it. But neat plant, needs very well drained soil. We've been growing it outdoors for a while. Did I put when we planted? Yeah, 2007. It's done well. Again, perfect drainage is key for growing it. A lot of cacti grow at very high elevations, and so they'll tolerate the cold, but there are very, very few cacti that will tolerate wet cold. So there are a few punches about it. So you really want to make sure you have very, very good drainage. Okay, the next one is a salvia. And we have a couple salvias up here. I'm not going to talk about this one, but these little guys down in front with the big fuzzy leaves, and there's some right there on the side also. This is Salvia Ethiopsis, which is sometimes called African sage. I'm not sure why, since it really doesn't grow, isn't from Africa, but it ranges from kind of most of southern central Europe, all the way across into the Caucasus and Ukraine, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, and all those areas. I want to say right up front, this is a terribly, terribly noxious weed on the West Coast. It is a bad plant, not a noxious weed for us here, especially in central North Carolina. I don't know if it's coastal, it may be have some more problems, but if you fall in love with it and want the plant, be aware of that it is a weed on the West Coast. Don't take it there. It's typically considered a biennial, although it often acts as a short-lived perennial. Biennial is a plant that from seed grows the first year vegetatively, puts out foliage. You get these kind of flat rosettes like you see here, and then the second year it'll flower. I really like it in this stage when it's just foliage, got these large leaves, new growths densely covered with hair. The older growths a little bit less so, but very, to me, striking foliage. I like that. When it flowers, it puts up a big candelabra-like flower stalk with small white flowers, a little bit of purple in them. I think they're really beautiful. Also, if you just let them go in the garden and don't do anything with them, they become tumbleweeds. They have an abscission zone at the base, and they will break off, and that's how they distribute their seed in the West, is they kind of tumble along, and their seeds go everywhere, pile up around fences and things like that. Make old westerns look good, I guess. But that is one of quite a few plants that become tumbleweeds. If you don't want it to seed around at all, you can cut off the flower stalks, or cut them off before they go to seed, and just grow the foliage. They will tend to be much longer lived if you don't let them go to seed. But kind of neat plants. It's another plant that does like well-drained soil. If you put it in too moist of a soil, it does not last long. They're they go over very quick. tend to die very quickly. Sometimes they'll go through the whole life cycle and flower and everything, but just they don't. They're not very persistent in moisture soil, which is part of the reason that they tend not to be a problem here, is because we have moist enough conditions that they go over too quickly to be very long-lived. Questions or thoughts?
Mark, is it bothered by slugs as much as the similar Salvia Ethiopsis?
I don't know the answer to that.
Because I know it's hard to grow that because of slug plague or something.
Yeah. You know, if you grow this where it wants to be, which is in lots of sun, pretty well drained soil, not a whole lot around, you tend to have fewer slugs in general anyway. But I don't know that for sure. Okay. Next plant on the list,
Oh, okay.
Lilium formosanum.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, bye.
This is one of my favorite lilies of all. This is a Taiwan native. Makes a usually about 4 to 6 foot tall, very upright lily. Got these nice narrow leaflets. To me, very architectural even before it flowers and after it flowers. And then long tubular white flowers, sometimes flushed with purple. You can see that a little bit here on some of these flowers. After traveling in Taiwan, I noticed that the pure white forms seem to be kind of a lower elevation form, and the ones with more purple tended to be kind of mid-range elevation. And then there's a little dwarf one, variety Pricei, that popped up when you got very high alpine elevations. Got some Pricei in here, but it flowers earlier.
Tim said it was rolled right next to it, I thought.
Oh, right here.
There you go.
Yeah. Almost overlooked it. It's hidden, but if you can see that, this is the kind of the alpine form variety Pricei. It's a little low thing. Same foliage, same flower, just flowers earlier, and it's a little dwarf guy. They're very easy from seed. From seed the first year, they will usually, if they're happy in the garden, they will flower the first year from seed. So nice plant. And this will seed around a bit in the garden. It's not a weed, it doesn't go up, but it will seed a bit in the garden. In fact, these are seedlings that have sown here themselves in the garden, which is nice. They'll kind of sprinkle through a perennial border. Almost always are in bloom, start blooming the first week of August. These started a little bit early, I think because we all thought it was August back in the middle of July. One of the neat things about it is after it finishes flowering, and you can see that a little bit on this little one, if you can see back here, the seed heads will lift up and stand up straight. You got the flowers that hang down, and the seed heads lift up. They'll turn brown, they'll open up, and you get these bare stalks with these brown seed pods on the top as you go into the fall and winter, which are nice for some winter interest, if you like that kind of thing. But super easy to grow, really likes sun, will tolerate a little bit of shade, but neat plant. And it is fragrant. Questions, thoughts?
Deer food?
Probably. It's not. There you go.
How about the soil? What kind of soil?
What kind of soil? Most anything. It'll grow in heavy clay. It'll grow in really loose soils. It's a very easy plant. What I've noticed is in heavier clays, you tend not to have it seeding around much. So you'll get a clump and it'll stay clump, but it doesn't seed as well as it does in a more organic soil.
Does it make bulbils on
Yeah, the little
stem?
bulbils.
The bulbils on the stem, not typically. Most all lilies can form those, but you rarely see that on these. But it produces a ton of seeds, and the seeds are so easy. If you don't want them to seed around your garden, you collect the seeds, and those just turn those capsules over. They're little flat black seeds, and you sow them, in your under your windowsill or whatever, and it'll look like turf growing in a few weeks, and just they all pop up. It's a relatively new plant for us, but how can you do a talk on heat tolerant plants in August and not talk about crepe myrtles? This is one of this kind of new group of ground covering crepe myrtles. We went from trees that are beautiful with beautiful bark and, you know, 4-season interest, and we shrunk them down into shrubs, which are nice flowering and have nice foliage. And now we're going to ground covers. There's Rosy carpet, Orchid Cascade. There's some others in this Cascade series, some more ground covery than others. What this does is it branches down low and then it arches over. So won't get more than about 2 feet tall, I'm told. This is the biggest plant I've grown. I tend to take all that with a grain of salt. You know, it may get a little bit larger, but you can see it's definitely wants to spread. So it kind of comes up and arches out and will spread out. When the flowers first open, they're kind of a somewhat dark pinky lavender. And then as they age, they turn lighter and lighter, eventually turning almost white. So you get, with a larger plant, you get a real multicolor effect. If you do deadhead it, you will get more flowers. I don't have enough time in the day for that, so I just enjoy the flowers while they last. It is reportedly very powdery mildew resistant. I can't answer that. We haven't grown it long enough for me to know if it truly is powdery mildew resistant, but looks pretty good now. So that's saying something. Gets good fall color, kind of reds and yellows, like a typical crepe myrtle. So it should make a pretty nice ground cover. Will be deciduous, so during the winter it'll just be kind of a tangled mass of stems. You can either leave them out or you can cut them all the way back. This is a crepe myrtle that, you know, you can whack back hard and that's okay. You won't leave big stubs at eye level. Questions?
What kind of soil?
What kind of soil? Crepe myrtles will grow anywhere as long as there's lots of sun. Crepe myrtles about as easy a plant, as woody plant as you can get. You can dig them up in the middle of the summer, transplant them, no problem. And by digging them up, I mean, you know, stick a shovel under them and pry them up. We used to move 15-foot tall ones with a skid steer. We just drive up, ran the bucket under there, lift it up, move them, and do it. No problem. Easy plants.
I've been telling growers to grow them. Some local wholesalers hadn't been growing. Gotta grow this one, of course.
Yeah, it is a patented plant, so there is that to it. I believe it's patented. I feel certain it's patented. But yeah, it's a great plant, and you know, it gives you a ground cover with a flower that at a time when you don't normally get it. Great in containers, you know, cascading over the side of a pot, over walls, that sort of thing,
Are
on
seeds
slopes.
easy to get?
Are seeds easy
or
to get?
whatever.
Plants are becoming more available. It's a pretty new plant, but there are some wholesale growers that are growing the plant. So yeah, like you said, more of them should be growing it soon. But from seed, it's not going to come true from seed. You might get some very interesting things from seeds. Definitely got some weird genetics in it. So who knows what you'll get.
I did see it 2 summers ago at Fairview, but I don't always see it. But ask at the nurseries and they'll try to get it. So
Yeah, exactly.
There was only one grower as far as I could find that year, and he wasn't local. So.
Now this came, we got this from one of the big local nurseries. I can't remember if it was Greenleaf. I'm big area wholesale with growers.
Right.
Greenleaf or somebody. I can't remember. You know, as Grip Point, asking for the plants is great. If you ask for it now, slim chance you'll get it. Places aren't ordering tons of plants in for the fall. They'll few to fill some holes. But if you go to your garden centers, you have a list of plants you want, go there during the winter. That's when they're putting in orders, early winter. They're putting in orders for next spring. I always tell people this, they love getting plants for you. Most good garden centers will take down your name and the plant you want, and they've got a little box, or maybe now computer. It's been a while since I worked in retail, you can tell. And when they're ordering plants, they'll go through there and look at what people want. And I know I used to do this. I used to be the person who had to go through there. And if they can call you and say, just wanted to let you know that Orchid Cascade crepe myrtle you were looking for, we've got some of those that are going to be coming in, should be in next week. Would you like us to give you a call when they come in? You know, you got a customer for life. You know, you ask them about that in December, January, and they call you up in the spring and tell you it's there, you're like, wow, they're looking out for me. So so do that, and the garden centers, they do want to help you out. That's one of the benefits of getting a relationship, developing a relationship with some local good garden centers, because they will do that kind of thing for you. Look for plants. All right, this next one is Calicarpa. We got is Calicarpa dichotoma Shiji Murasaki. I've also seen the name Calicarpa dichotoma Hagoromo. Looks to be the same plant, so not quite sure on that. We're going with Shiji Murasaki right now. I'm also will say we've got it as Calicarpa dichotoma. It looks a lot more like Calicarpa japonica to me. I'm not sure that it really is dichotoma. But whatever it is, it's a great plant. We got this plant, small plant, heavily variegated, this sprinkle splashed with white. And we thought, well, that's a plant that's not going to grow and it's going to fry if you put it out anywhere except for in moist, well-drained soil and dappled sun, where we'd all like to be if we could be, if we were plants. And so doing what we do, we stuck it out here in a bed that gets no irrigation and full sun, and wow, look at it. Doesn't burn, it grows pretty darn vigorously. New growth comes out, it's all this mottled kind of creamy yellowy white with green. The new growth comes out kind of pinch pink. Young stems are pink, and does wonderful for us. It does flower for us. It'll flower kind of off and on through much of the season. We have never seen it form fruit. So haven't gotten up close and personal with the flowers yet to see if maybe there's some sterility, but we have not had any fruit. Nobody I know who has grown this plant has ever had fruit on it. So, it's a beauty berry with no berries, but the foliage is worth growing enough as it is. Looks like it's got all the parts for it. Typically, Calicarpas, especially Calicarpa dichotoma, are arching shrubs. This has been very upright, so we'll see what it does over time, but everything seems to point to kind of continuing to grow in this kind of upright mound. Really nice kind of size and shape for a landscape. But we really like this plant. Questions or thoughts?
Can you prune it heavily like you can the dichotoma?
Yeah, you should be able to prune this back to a nub if you wanted to. We haven't done that, but I would assume, all Calicarpas
So you haven't done it since you planted it?
No. We have taken
2008.
cuttings from it. This year's the first year we've taken a significant number of cuttings on it, just because it hasn't been big enough to do that yet. It's easily doubled, maybe tripled in size this year. It kind of hung around. Let's see, we planted it in 2008, and it actually was in our lath house, and we moved it here in 2009. So it's took it a while to really get going, but this year, boom.
How was it growing in the last house?
Great. Yeah. It was a young plant. It was a small rooted cutting in the lath house, and was only in there for about a year, so it hadn't done a whole lot, but it was performing well. Yeah, this will grow in shade very well.
How tall do you expect it to get?
Well, if it were truly Calicarpa dichotoma, I would expect it not to get much taller than this. Calicarpa japonica can get a fair amount taller. I don't know. This is not growing like any other Calicarpa I've seen. It's doing this kind of upright thing and not arching over. Kind of more like our native Calicarpa, some of those. So I don't know. I would think it would probably top out at around 6 to 8 feet, which is bigger than I would have said when we planted it. I would have said 4 or 5 feet. So ask me in another year or two and I may say 12 feet. I don't know. At that point, we'll have lots of cuttings if it gets to be 12 feet tall. Other questions?
Where'd you get the cutting from? Couldn't you find out from the parent plant?
No, because the rooted cuttings came from a wholesale grower who had bought a little plant in Japan, and his plant is not a whole lot, you know, it hasn't gotten a whole lot bigger than this, and he's growing all his stuff in containers, so it's, you know, it doesn't get that big. So I don't really know. He's probably got one in the ground that maybe have a year or two on this, but that's about it. Ginkgos. Ginkgos are great plants. They're so tough. They'll take it cold. You know, you go up to Chicago Botanic Garden. They have a big collection where it's bitter cold. Seems like I'm always there in the winter. Down south here, they do incredibly well. We don't all have room for a great big ginkgo in our garden though. So this is one of several small forms. This has been one of the ones that has stayed kind of more compact for us so far than many others. It seems to want to continue that way. It's a European form called Troll. It grafted high. This is standard rootstock, and it's been grafted up here. You can also get them grafted down at ground level, so they're just a little mound. Great for containers, because it's a plant that you can leave out in a container all winter, and it'll survive just fine because it's so hardy. On this particular form, Troll, very short internodes, very dense and tight. You can train it up. If you get a really young one, you can train it up to a single stem and have kind of a pyramidal tree. But typically it's grown kind of as this little mound or ball. The foliage is a little thicker textured than a lot of the other, than the typical ginkgo. It's got this nice bluish cast on the new growth. It is a native plant. It just took a little hiatus. It was here growing millions of years ago in the United States and then died out. So, you know, people always say native plants. You know, one of the definitions is a plant that was here before the Europeans got here. Well, this was here, you know, 1.5 million years before the Europeans got here. So that beats most of those other native plants. You know, that's here before red maples and things were. But neat plant. Now it's only the only known locality of it growing wild or thought to be grown wild is in China and Zhejiang province. So we need to bring them back. This is conservation when you grow ginkgos here in the U.S. It does get the great gold fall color that ginkgos get. If you grow it for 20 years, perhaps it would flower and fruit. Although I don't know that it would or not. I don't know if it's male or female. I've never been able to figure that out, but I think you'd be waiting a long time before you got any fruits on there if it is female.
And that will grow out.
It's a good question. I have seen online this listed as growing to, I think it said 2.5 feet in 10 years. I don't buy that. It's going to get bigger than that. But I don't really know. I would imagine 10 years, if you got one grafted at ground level, I would think if it was growing in a spot it really liked, in 10 years, it's probably going to be maybe 6 feet. But I don't really know. We haven't grown it long enough. As far as I know, it hadn't been in the U.S. long enough.
But is it true?
It is a true dwarf, yes. Very much so.
And it's only available grafted as such? Is that...
Yes, pretty much all named ginkgos, almost all named ginkgos are grafted. They can be rooted. It can be difficult, and they tend to be slower growing when they're on their own roots. So a grower doesn't have time to wait 3 or 4 or 5 years before he can sell a little tiny plant. You know, he needs to get that grafted and growing and sell it.
What's it grafted to?
Ginkgo,
Oh, well,
just a seedling ginkgo.
There's one called Gnome too.
Yeah.
Did you mention that? That's a nice one too.
Yeah. And that one we have a plant.
You have one, I think, over by the visitor center.
Yeah. And there are several other dwarf ginkgos. Troll has so far been the most uniform of them. A lot of them are kind of, but in the limited experience I have with growing 1s and 2s of different ones, Troll has so far been the best of the little dwarf ones.
Given its planting location, it likes a little shade.
It'll grow in full sun to part shade. Yeah, the sun will come up over here, and this will get full blazing afternoon sun for most of the day. When the sun really counts. When it gets hot as opposed to now. Okay, next one's a blue spruce, Colorado blue spruce. often not considered to be a very good plant for the southeast. A lot of blue spruces kind of suffer. Some do better than others, and Hoopsii, this particular form, seems to be one of the ones that I have noticed thriving most everywhere I've seen it, from very far north to pretty darn far south. A lot of these conifers that come from higher elevations, from colder climates, don't like our warm nighttime temperatures and suffer. But again, I think this form, Hoopsii, is better adapted than most. It's also, which is nice, considered about the bluest of the blue. This is really one of the standards of blue spruce in terms of, you know, is it better than what's out there? Was it bluer than Hoopsii? And there aren't a lot that are almost white. It's so blue. It will form a large tree over time, 50 or 60 feet tall. Hoopsii keeps a nice form, has relatively long needles, which give it a really nice character. They do like full sun. There's one in front of the visitor center, across from the visitor center by the brick circle, and even larger Hoopsii. Again, one of the better forms. And they do, if you've been out to some of the areas where it grows, like Colorado in the summer, it gets blazing hot there. It gets very cold there. It's got to be able to withstand a wide range of temperatures. And some do better than others, like I said. This is a great one. If you want something a little smaller, but want that color, some other ones that seem to do pretty well in the south. Fat Albert is one that does well. It's kind of a short, squat one, and Montgomery is another one that does pretty well in the southeast. Okay, another native plant. See, I'm doing a bunch of native plants. Ginkgos, Picea, this Panicum. Let's get you prepped for the great grasses next time. Panicum virgatum Shenandoah. This is an interesting form. Got a lot of excitement when it first came out, and still a fantastic plant, I think. It's our native switchgrass. The claim to fame of Shenandoah is emerges green and the tips of the leaves turn burgundy. And they kind of hold that burgundy throughout the summer, and then in the fall gets a really nice burgundy color again. Some of the grasses can be a little bit can be a problem. Miscanthus is becoming a pretty big problem all over the place with it seeding around. Now there's some sterile ones that have been developed and are being developed that are great plants. But you know, with the grasses, it's kind of nice sometimes to get one that you know is native, you know isn't going to be a problem. And the Panicums are fantastic for that. There are some other kind of burgundy leaf forms. Some of the differences are between some is the Shenandoah keeps those burgundy tips all season, and it also doesn't have a real rigid upright structure as opposed to some of the other Panicums, which can be, just completely vertical. This goes up, but it'll kind of splay out a little bit. But we got 4 inches of rain this weekend, and this didn't lay down at all. It's nice and upright, while still kind of giving that soft texture. Nice airy flowers. Great for textural planting, great for contrast with some other herbaceous perennials and shrubs and things like that. Questions about Panicum? All right.
Okay, does it spread?
Does it spread? It's a clumper.
It's a clump.
And clumps will get bigger and bigger. And if you look here, you can see where clumps that are planted together have spread kind of together and will form kind of a solid mass of plants. But if you plant it, it will not spread out all over the place. Just become a bigger and bigger clump. Without kind of that like miscanthus and pumps grass. It's right there. The Panicum is a little bit softer. It's a clump, but it doesn't just stay in a perfect circle, if you will, with the stems. It's a little more organic kind of growing.
Sometimes native plants don't transplant very well. Does this one transplant?
Oh yeah, Panicums are great. They're so easy.
How about division? Do you have to divide it every few years?
Because it doesn't grow out in that ring like say Miscanthus, Panicums, you don't typically have that problem with the center dying out like you do here. Now some of the older areas may die out, but since it grows as kind of a more organic clump, not this perfect circle, it's less noticeable. Certainly it was healthy for the plant to divide it every so often, but not as often as you would need to with the miscanthus. Probably about, if you do it every 4 or 5 years, you'd be just fine. You'd probably get away with doing it every 7, 8 years. All right, the last one is Prunus Lucitanica, the Portuguese cherry laurel, which, although called Portuguese, it grows in a kind of a wide range, wide area from kind of around the western Mediterranean region. Where it is grown widely, it is a very popular plant. You see it a lot in the Pacific Northwest, a lot in Southern Europe. It's very, very popular there. Beautiful evergreen shrub, can grow 10 to 20 feet tall if you just let it go naturally. You can limb it up, make it into a small tree. You can shear it into a hedge and keep it small. But it's a fantastic plant. I look at this with these nice dark green leaves, kind of the reddish petioles, small spikes of white flowers that turn red and then kind of purpley black. And I can't figure out why so many people are growing the typical Prunus lauriceraceus cherry laurels. I mean, to me, this is a much more attractive plant and tends to have fewer problems than the Prunus lauriceraceus. A little bit serrated leaf, real nice glossy, holds the color well during the winter. Real easy plant. Will go from full sun to part shade pretty easily. Prefers more sun. You can see here it's trying to get out into the sun. But when it's in fruit, gorgeous. Flowers are not inconspicuous, but not terribly showy either.
Are the birds attracted to the fruit at all? Do they eat it?
Does anybody know? Birds? I'm not a bird person.
Birds are attracted to the trunk. To show you how tough it is, I have one that I got as an arboretum cutting giveaway about 20 years ago. It's now more than 20 feet tall. And it is totally ringed with sapsucker holes all the way around, up and down the trunk, all the way up, and it keeps going. Not a problem.
How about fruit? Did birds eat the fruit?
They must, because it disappears.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
All right. Good to know.
I don't see the birds on it, but
Other questions, thoughts? I made through with 5 minutes to spare, so I can actually answer some questions. I won't run off like I said I would. No?
No.
All right. Well, thanks for coming and braving the heat. Hopefully, next month at 1 o'clock, not 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock, it will be cooler. Although the October tour always seems to be pretty warm.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you all for coming out.
September's at 1 o'clock?
September's at 1 o'clock, yeah. I'm already skipping ahead to October. I'm waiting for it to get cool.
Thanks for a great tour.
Thank you.